right. Really excited to uh, really excited to jump in here today, and got Karen Craggs-Milne on here, who's a go-to expert for organizations who want to get equality right. So, as she's known as the Oprah of diversity and inclusion by her peers, so definitely excited to talk to her. She's been recognized by the Obama White House as a gender equality change maker. She's been a Goodwill ambassador for Sustainable Development Goals. And been a really amazing, has a really impressive things that she's done in her life. She's now a founder and CEO of Conscious Equality Incorporated, and she works with nonprofits, NGOs, corporations, governments to deliver on their equality needs. So excited to talk to her, A, about how to not be a racist, and B, how we can use that in our various interactions in our daily lives and in our business. So, yeah, excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. So, yeah, first of all, just kind of talk about yourself a little bit and help us get to know you, and then I'd love to hear how you are, how we can all, not be a racist in our personal lives.
That's a big one, right? I'm sure a lot of people kind of looked at that and thought, she's got the answer. Well, we can always try. So thanks for inviting me on this platform. I think what you're doing is so incredible. And, I was listening to Yannick's interview as well, and I think he's so right that we have a choice about how we see what's happening in the world. And on one hand, it's a really dark time, and on another hand, it's the darkness that allows the light to come through. And so that's a theme through my life and through the work that I've been doing. It may not seem obvious, but I'm actually from Africa, and I'm very, very proud for my African roots. My mom is Indian, my dad is British, from a little town called Darlington in England. And, what I love about that intersection in my identity is that I can get in a cab and go somewhere and someone will ask me, where are you from? Are you Latina? Are you Indian? But they will rarely guess that I grew up in Africa, I was born in Africa, and that I have such a strong connection to that continent and to those people. And so it's kind of like it forces them, when they realize I'm from Kenya, it forces them to go, so what was my assumption about what it means to be African? Because a lot of people walk around thinking Africans are people with black skin, right? Where there's so many others who have come to the continent, who've grown up there, who've contributed, and I've raised over $100 million for programming in Africa. And so, I'm very proud of my relationship with that continent and the work that has to be done and that has been done there. And so it's just a tiny example of how I relate to the work around race. I think, a big piece in this work is understanding that there is no black and white. It's actually very gray, and that we all have very deep connections to the experience of racism, either in terms of like having experienced it or connecting to people who we know and love who have gone through that. And so, with that in mind, if you don't mind, I just want to share the story of my brother, because he's the reason why I do this work. And so, as I was saying, my mom is Indian, my dad is white. He came with the colonial government to Africa in his, early 20s. And he also has a son who is black. And so I grew up in this very multicultural home where, on the one hand, I saw a very strict vegetarian mother marrying a white man who has the best steakhouse in town. And it's like the worst thing you could do would be to eat a steak, because she completely believes that, cows are holy. And yet they got married and they created a home. And, it took separate kitchens and separate pots and pans and whatever, but they figured it out and they learned how to live together, even though one was an atheist, one was a Christian, one was a practicing Indian. We had different languages in the home, etc. So I grew up with this rich experience of what it can look like when you love and embrace people for everything that they are. And at the same time, I grew up seeing my brother who was black and my mother who was, a brown Indian girl, and my dad who was this white colonialist, all experiencing racism in different ways, depending on which community they were with at a particular time. So I have a very nuanced understanding of how your identity and the intersections of who you are and how you navigate the world, you can be the same person. And one minute you're held up and respected, and another minute you're being put against the wall and punched because you're the wrong skin color. And for me, it became very personal. This work became very personal. And I just decided that I'm not going to stand by and let someone else fix this problem, because people I loved were on the receiving end of it. And so I spent my whole life trying to help people realize that they actually have a say in what the future looks like and what the world looks like and how they can help us change it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what an amazing story. It's so interesting. Like when we go to places where we have interactions with multiple types of people, it opens us up in so many ways. And I think ultimately, those experiences teach us, like, even in our differences and in our and in our similarities, we're all human, and yet we have to figure out how to navigate these waters, because this is such an important topic. Like for us right now, every day is like, how can we empower other people? How can we help these communities, without coming across, in a negative way? And so yeah, I would love to hear, like, what's, I don't want to say it like the top 5 tips to not be racist, but like, what do you have, like, what are some tools that we can use to A, be aware of that in our own lives, and B, to like combat that in a really conscious way?
So I want to answer that question in 3 parts. And the first part is, understanding this new language that I've created around conscious equality. And it's after doing 20 years of work trying to understand power dynamics in different spaces all over the world, trying to understand why are these issues reproduced? Why are we investing so much money and not seeing sustainable change? And what is it going to take for that to happen? And so conscious equality was a new practice, a new methodology that I brought to the field of addressing equality issues. And there were 4 things that I think are really important for people to understand about doing this work. The first is that good intentions are not enough. A lot of us say, oh, we didn't mean to offend. We had good intentions. But you know what? That joke was racist. Like, so you have to understand that, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. What matters is what you put into the world, whether it's that, dinner time interaction, or whether it's the policy that your government rolled out. What you put into the world has real impacts on people, and you're responsible for that impact, not your intention. The second thing that's really important about this work is understanding that, this is not about black and white. There are so many levels to oppression, and it's a very intersectional experience. And so when you take the idea that blacks are suffering in America or anywhere in the world, it's true. But at the same time, we need to understand that the most at-risk community, when all of this was happening, the most at-risk community was, yes, it was black people, but it was the LGBTQI community within the black community. Why? Because they were being, there's levels of oppression. So they're being oppressed because they're black. They're being oppressed because they don't fall in the gender binary. They're not, if you're trans, are you really a woman? Of course, we respect that, but a lot of people don't. And even within the black community, there's a lot of homophobia. There's a lot of sexism, etc. And so, it's not as simple as black versus white. There's so many layers to it. And even black people in their own communities experience oppression from their own people as well as everybody else. So it's complicated, and that's why we need a complicated intersectional understanding of this work, and we shouldn't simplify it too much. The third thing I want to say is that this work is as much about turning inwards and doing the internal work on yourself as it is about helping them. Like, we really have to be careful to not, try to be a martyr, but really, how is what I see the world embodied in my own experience of living? How do I perpetuate these things? How do I show up? How do I knowingly and unknowingly, give space for all these racist attitudes, these unfair jokes? For example, just very quickly, I was working with an HR team, and they were saying, oh, we're white women, and, we're not trying to be racist, but, black people don't like us. And I said, well, if you think about it, you hold all the cards in your hands when a black person comes through for an interview, and they're sitting in front of you, and they know that you have the power to either put them through to the next level or to say yes or no to the job. And you're saying you're not racist, but when you ask them, what is your job, like, what is your salary expectation for this role? And they come in at 30,000 less than everybody else because they don't have the networks, they don't understand that this role is priced at 60,000 and you accept it at 30, you're part of the problem. You don't tell them that this job was earmarked at 60, so you know what, the minimum I'm going to give you is 60. You say, great, I get to have this labor and I get to have it for less. So you're exploiting people. So I think this work is as much about yourself as it is about others. And so now if I take those lessons and I bring them into what can I do as an individual, because I think that's slightly different from what can I do as a company. So I, as an individual, I think there's a few things that you can do. And one, this is huge, is understand that non-racism is not the same as anti-racism. My silence, my willingness to sit back and lie to myself that I'm being neutral, that I'm not a bad person, that just because I wasn't the one who raped that person or who put that person in jail, I'm not bad. That's part of the problem, because we're all products of a system that have been historically designed to exploit Black people and Indigenous people and people of color. So it doesn't matter that you didn't do it. You are a product of that system. And so if you choose to see yourself as neutral, if you choose not to take action, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping the cause. You're actually maintaining the inequalities and the status quo. So, my number one call is get off the fucking fence, right? Like, get off that fence and pick a side, because at the end of the day, your silence is helping you pick a side. And so why not make a conscious choice? The other thing is, make this personal. Like when I didn't know George Floyd, I didn't know Breonna, I don't know all these people, but what I do know is I have a Black brother who navigates the world every day from a place of his Blackness. There's no day when he can unzip that suit and show up and be somebody else. He's always going to be a Black man in this world, and he's always going to experience his life in that way. And I've seen the injustices that come with that. So this work is personal for me. I'm fighting for him. When we talk about cancer, we say, walk for your grandmother who died with cancer, walk for your mother who died with cancer. So who the hell are you walking for when it comes to anti-racism? Because we all know somebody that we should be walking for, we should be fighting for, right? So make it personal. And don't tell me that I don't know anybody, because that's bullshit. The third thing is, don't hide behind learning. So many white people, and I love white people, I'm a white person, and he's actually taught me a lot about both the power and the burden of being white, which I'll talk about in a minute. But don't hide behind learning, because so many people are saying, I'm so uncomfortable. I never thought about the world this way. I didn't realize that people were, scared to walk into a store because they're going to be followed around, even if they haven't done anything. So there's kind of like a seeing things you've never seen before, and then there's a fear that, oh, I don't know enough. They've lived and grown up in this, but I need to study and study and study. So how many books have you read? At some point you got to stop reading about swimming and you got to jump in the damn water. So stop trying to educate yourself and at some point say, I know what I know, and I need to stop using this as a way of avoiding the actual work and start doing the work itself. And that leads me to the last thing, which is, do one thing every day. And it can be as simple as, I have a neighbor who walks by my front door every single day and I never acknowledge him. Why? Why do I never acknowledge him? Is it because he's Black? Because I'm uncomfortable? Is it because I don't know. I don't know what your reason is, but identify those moments and invite yourself. Don't force yourself, but invite yourself to show up differently. And so asking yourself, who do I want to be in this world? Do I want to be that asshole who never looked up and said hi to this guy and he was here for 15 years until somebody shot him? Or do I want to be the kind of person who knocked on the door and said, hey, I know this is a really difficult time and I just want you to know that we are here with you. We stand by you and we're just across the road. If there's anything you need, we're here for you. Sometimes I feel like this work around anti-racism is just about reminding people that we're all human beings. In some ways, I feel like I get to do the most obvious thing in the world, right? But I have to say this, I actually wrote it down because it hit me really hard as I was thinking about this topic. Do we understand that racism is actually rape of humanity? Think about that. We're taking people's humanity and we're freaking raping them every day on the streets, in the schools, in the jail cells. And then we're saying we don't have anything to do with it. So we need to be, really committed to taking action and at the same time be really gentle with ourselves, because I'm not going to solve all the problems. You're not going to solve all the problems, but the space of influence that I have, the community that I'm a part of, the organization that I walk into every day, those are my spheres of influence. Those are the spaces that I can make a difference. That's where my voice matters. And that's where I need to speak up, even if I'm scared of getting it wrong. Because if I have somebody say something that's not right, those are the spaces that I should be calling. And not, I think it's also about tone, right? Because you don't want to go in and pick fights with people. The goal here is not to create fractures in your family and your community and your organization. It's to lead with love. And so there's ways to invite people to reflect on what they're saying with love. So I've just like given you a ton of stuff. I still have some thoughts around organizations, but I'm going to give you a moment to say something if you want.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's great. I'm just excited to hear all of this coming out, and I'm sure there's, as with anything, there's a million points of view, right? But I love that. I love how you're coming to this, and I do believe that like it's in all of us to. The work is always about us, right? Everything in the world that we do or create, it's always about our own relationship with the things outside of us. So I love that. Like I love that you're keyed in on that, and I think yesterday a lot of the talk was about like, oh, we are all human, right? That we are all trying to come together and live in a world where we have 1,000 different, or billions of experiences that are all different, right? And making this work, trying to make this work for everybody, and so I think that like that's really important. What I kind of am curious about is what do doing that internal work and looking towards that, obviously, going and saying hi to someone when you wouldn't before, like what are clues though that we can look for, internally, to know that like, oh, maybe I need to look at something a little bit closer there.
Well, I think so. Here's something really cool. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Abraham Hicks. And one of the things that Abraham Hicks talks about is how your emotions are a GPS, right? They give you direction, but most of us have been taught to play down our emotions and ignore them. So the first thing that triggers, like if there's a situation where I'm uncomfortable or I'm doing something wrong or I'm off base, the first thing that gets triggered is my emotion. And I know right away, hold on a second. Like I'm uncomfortable or I'm trying to avoid something, or right. And so the thing that you need to do is like really just stay with that and say, let me inquire for a second what my GPS system is trying to point to. And sometimes what it takes is getting really good at saying, I'm so sorry, I just said that. Like I have 40 years of unlearning to do, and I just realized that what came out of my mouth was not right. And I just want to take that back and take responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So listening to how you're feeling, and then even getting better and better at just owning your humanity, owning the mistakes we make, owning up when you realize you dropped the ball.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think we see a lot of where like there's this, if you're racist, then you're a horrible human. Like you are like, and I think, we all have biases that we've just garnered from what we have learned in life, and I mean, part of this is all trying to uncover those and pull those back. But what would you say to people who feel like they are, I'm trying to say this in the right way, but like people who think that, they feel attacked because people like they hear racist and feel attacked, right? Or they hear these words of people that are like, fighting each other. They don't feel, or at least they don't want to admit that they're being racist. How do you handle that in interactions and in relationships?
So I think you raised a really key point there when you started this conversation just now, and it was around morality. One of the biggest barriers to doing this work is that we don't want to be called racist because racist means I'm a bad person. What we have to understand is that there's two types of racists, and everybody's a racist, but there's two types. There's the conscious racist and the unconscious racist. And I would say the unconscious racist, is somebody who walks around and, who's being racist and doesn't even know it. The conscious racist is like Hitler and everybody else who makes conscious decisions to make people's lives difficult because they actually devalue those people's lives. They say these people are less than human. Their value is less than mine. So what happens when we for a second put on this new way of looking at things and we say, you know what? Because I'm a product of society, because I'm a product of 400 years of exploitation, which I didn't have control over, because I'm born with white skin, I am part of a system that is racist, and therefore, up until this point, in some way, shape, or form, I have reproduced it. Therefore, I am racist, right? Without making it a statement that means I'm a bad human being. All it means is this is part of who I am, and it's something I can make a decision to change, right? So I think the moral piece is really, really important. And the other thing I want to say is, yeah, people are pissed. People are losing lives every day. People's children are being gunned down on the street. Like, how can you not be angry about it? How can you? So, I understand not being comfortable with these words being used. I understand not wanting to be accused of this thing because you're not the same as the policeman in a uniform who shot somebody who was innocent, right? But this is something that's part of the healing journey, is being able to hold somebody in all their pain, all their grief, all their anger, and say, I completely stand with you. You just called me racist. Whether or not that's true or not, what's more important is that I am your ally. I can see your pain. I can respect everything that you've gone through, and I'm not going to pick a fight with you about whether or not I'm a racist. What I'm going to do is tell you I'm standing by you. And it's so important for white people and people like me to understand that we need to actually earn the trust of the Black community again. We don't have the right to expect trust from people just because we think we're good people, right? Like the way I explained it to somebody else was, the British brought in Indians into Africa. And so we were exploited because we were there to be the middle class. And at the same time, we were part of the system that exploited Black people in Africa, right? So we were oppressed and we were the oppressors. And after all these generations of exploiting Africans, we ended up with the wealth, we ended up with the businesses, we ended up with an amazing lifestyle. So even Africans in Africa freaking hate brown people. And I know, even though I love them, I know when I show up in West Africa, in East Africa, in South Africa in my work, I know that what the first thing I'm going to get from any African who sees that I'm from Africa and I'm brown is she's one of them. She is part of the reason why I don't have the opportunities that they do. And I cannot expect them to meet me at my level and to trust me until I accept that this is the history and this is part of where we are. And then I have to build that trust and I have to actively show them that I am an ally. I show up every day. I'm consistent in the way I interact with them. I look at their point of view. I accept their pain and embrace it and acknowledge it. I don't make excuses for it. And then I do what I can to help, to make a difference, and to use my power to change the way things are done. And so here we are saying, what you were just talking about is called white fragility, right? Where white people go, I don't want to be called racist. I'm a good person. Why are you turning it on me? I don't like that. It's uncomfortable. It's like, this isn't about you. This isn't about you feeling good. This is about you showing up for somebody who's in freaking generations of pain. Like how much love do you have? How much compassion can you give to somebody who's had, look at Indigenous women in Canada. The amount of generations of Indigenous women who've gone missing, who've been murdered, who've been beaten up by their own people, who've had alcoholism issues. Like, how much love do Canadians have for Indigenous people after all the trauma they've experienced and that we have directly or indirectly caused? Do I have the right to stand there and say, I'm not part of the problem? Do I have the right there to stand there and say, you Indigenous person, I didn't do anything to you, you should be nice to me? It's like, no. The first thing I need to do is earn that trust. And you start by acknowledging the history and where they're coming from.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Yeah, this was such a great conversation. When you said earlier you had something just to say about, I know, about the business side of things, and then you said something about the power and burden of being white. You want to hear out on this?
Yeah, sure. So let me talk about the power and burden of being white. So, and I learned this from my dad. So, my dad is a white guy. He grew up in England. You know, there were many ways in which he really had to earn what he ended up with having in life. It didn't come to him easy. So, you know, I acknowledge that white people earn what they have too. They have hard times too, right? And so he went through a lot in his life, and he had a lot of hardships. And at the end of the day, he's still white, and he still walks into a room and doesn't have someone following him thinking that he's about to steal. Or if he was walking into a magistrate's office, like we heard in the UK yesterday on BBC, you know, a white person walks in, and we don't assume that they're actually somebody who broke the law. But if a black person walks in as a barrister, they're told, get out and go stand in line because it's not your turn yet, because you think that because they're black they're in court, right? So there's something about whiteness that affords us the power. What First of all, it affords us the benefit of the doubt. And one way that that shows up is somebody who once said to me, you know what, I've had like 10 jobs in my career, and because I'm a white male, nobody ever asked me which school I went to, where I got my education. He said, I dropped out of high school and no one's ever once asked me, and look at how far I got without that education. If you're a black person, you don't have the benefit of the doubt. You have to earn that and more just to get a seat at that interview table, right? So that's the privilege that comes with whiteness. It's like you have the benefit of the doubt and you have more opportunities. People just give you more, right?
Yep.
And the burden of being white is a really interesting one because, as I said to somebody I was working with recently who was called out for being racist, he made a comment that was unintentionally considered racist, and it went all the way to his employer, and then he ended up working with me. But in that context, he said, Karen, I'm a good person. Like, you know, it was a joke. It was a freaking joke. Can't you people just chill out? Right? Like, I don't get it. And I said, look at you. You are tall. You are muscular. You are white. You're living in a house that is fully paid for. You have a wife who's sitting at home taking care of your child. You represent everything that is white privilege and wrong with having privilege. Like, you represent everything that other people have not had access to. And it's not that you are a bad person. It's not that there's anything wrong with the fact that this is the set of cards you got. It's understanding that you're carrying the burden of all that that represents to everybody else. So if I'm all of these things when I show up in a room, I walk in a room and I'm the epitome of, you know, white privilege, like, I have a burden to carry because now people are making assumptions about me. They're assuming that I'm an asshole. They're assuming that I'm racist. They're assuming that I don't give a shit about what's happening to you and George Floyd and Breonna, right? So there's a burden there to both recognize how you show up and how people relate to you, but also to then show them that they're wrong, right? And part of that work is challenging what we call, when we're looking at gender dynamics, we talk about, you know, what it means to be macho, what it means to be the man, right? And so if you look in Latin America, for example, men are actually dying at higher rates than women because they're trying to be the typical guy, which is, I take drugs and I have a gun and I'm really strong and I go take risks. And so they've bought into a certain way of what it means to be a man, and it's costing them their lives. And in the same way, there's a certain narrative about what it means to be a white man. And that narrative gives you power, but there's no power that doesn't come without a cost. And the thing that people are not doing is understanding, yes, I have this power, but what is the cost that I'm bearing for having this power because I've bought into this narrative that I can't have emotions. I can't apologize for generations of exploitation that my family was a part of. I can't stand on the streets and picket with, you know, black people. I can't call out my CEO and say, you know what, I'm the only white person at this table who's going to tell you that it's about time we have black people in leadership. So you have to it's like you have to re-engage in what does it mean to be a white man with power, and how do I deconstruct that, and how do I show up in such a way that I'm being a different kind of white man. And when we have enough of them, when we have enough of those people out there, that's when we're going to start seeing real change, because black people will not look at you and go, oh shit, I better get out of the way before this guy's going to shoot me, or that guy's going to accuse me of something, or that guy's going to take me down, right? So this is what we mean by transformation. Transformation is not about, let's go create more spots for black people in my company. That's not transformation. Transformation is, what container have I unconsciously being stuck in, and how can I break free from that container and write my own narrative about who I am and how I show up in this world and how I have people's back. At the end of the day, when I do the training around this work, I always ask people, what would it be like if you navigated the world knowing that people had your back? Right?
Yeah. No, I talked about that in my talk yesterday, actually, about, believing that the world has your back, and how that one belief like changes everything, and I think that's really powerful. Honestly, I think we could go on for hours here, talking about this. It's 30 minutes is such a short time to just take a little small look at this subject. But let everyone know where they can find out more about your work and the work in the world, how to build more conscious equality, and find out more about you.
Great. So if you want to reach out to me, you can go to my website, www.karen, Karen, Craggs, Craggs.com. If you want, you can also text me. My phone number is 1-416-897-7019. And, you can just Google my name and you'll find me in all kinds of ways. But I think here's the thing I want to say. Like, I want us to understand that now more than ever, we have the opportunity to transform the darkness into the light. And, we should not apologize for standing up for what is right. We should not apologize for who we are and the journey we have to take. This isn't about making people wrong and diminishing who they are. It's about lifting everybody up. And so, how do we lift everybody up? With love, with compassion. At the end of the day, that's what I'm saying is like, freaking hold those Black people in their pain and love them anyway. And for Black people and BIPOC people who don't trust white people, freaking hold those white people and love the shit out of them until they understand that we are not going to create a war here. We're going to love each other through this, and we're going to get through this together. Like, that's the transformation, right? Oh my God, I'm going to start crying.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. Oh, it was so great to have you. So great to have this conversation. And this was the first time we actually got to meet. So I'm definitely looking forward to continuing to follow what you do and seeing the amazing things that you're bringing to the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Lots of love.
Yeah.
Bye.